This artifact was found inside a coal seam, dated over 20 million years old. It's solid iron, smooth, symmetrical, machined, but humans didn't exist when it was formed. They call it the Wolfsegg Iron, and no one can agree on what it is. This is File 1 from the Artifact Archives. In 1885, miners near the small Austrian town of Wolfsegg unearthed something impossible, a perfectly formed metallic artifact embedded inside a solid seam of coal, dated at roughly 20 million years old, known as the Wolfsegg Iron, or sometimes called the Salzburg Cube. Its very existence defied conventional timelines, and before scientists could reach a consensus, it vanished. The story begins deep underground in the 19th century, while splitting open chunks of lignite coal at the mine near the Austrian village of Wolfsegg. Workers came across something unexpected, something that didn't belong. Embedded completely within the coal seam was a small metallic object. It was dense, compact, and roughly cube-shaped, with clean edges and smooth surfaces that immediately stood out against the raw, jagged texture of the coal. Its unnatural shape made one thing clear: this was not a geological formation, it was a manufactured object. News of the find eventually reached Adolf Galt, a German mining engineer and geologist with a respected academic background. Intrigued, Galt examined the object firsthand. What he saw was puzzling: an iron mass that appeared deliberately formed, with no signs of corrosion, and a level of symmetry that defied natural explanation. But what truly deepened the mystery wasn't the object itself, it was where it was found. The surrounding coal seam belonged to a Miocene epoch, dating back some 20 million years, long before the existence of humans, let alone human technology. Galt documented the find and presented it publicly, describing its metallic composition and curious characteristics. Yet even then, skepticism surfaced. Could this be a mistake? A piece of machinery that had somehow found its way into the coal through some unknown means? Or was it exactly what it appeared to be? An impossibly ancient artifact locked inside the earth for millions of years? What the miners found wasn't just oddly shaped, it was chemically and structurally baffling. The object weighed a little over 2 pounds and was composed almost entirely of iron, around 96.6% pure iron, with small amounts of carbon, but notably lacking in nickel. The absence alone ruled out any chance of it being meteoric, as meteorites typically contain a significant amount of nickel and other trace metals. Metallurgists who later examined it were struck by its uniform composition. There were no visible casting seams, no signs of modern machinery, and no inclusions of slag, a byproduct normally present in early metalwork. In fact, its clean surfaces and defined edges made it look like something straight out of a 19th or 20th century machine shop. But again, that was the problem. No known civilization could have forged iron like this millions of years ago, let alone have it perfectly sealed within the coal seam from the Miocene epoch. Some believe it was a modern intrusion, a misplaced tool or industrial fragment that somehow worked its way into the ancient layers of sediment. But even under microscopic analysis, there were no indications of disruption around the coal. The artifact and its encasement seemed to have aged together, fused over time in a way that was nearly impossible to explain by modern geological understanding. How could something so advanced be so impossibly old? In 1966, the artifact resurfaced for renewed scrutiny at the Vienna Museum of Natural History. With more advanced tools at their disposal, researchers conducted a fresh round of metallurgic testing. Once again, the results pointed in a troubling direction. The object was made of forged iron, but bore none of the telltale signs of modern smelting. No slag residue, no casting bubbles, no machine tool markings. The cleaner the data, the harder it became to explain. Skeptics offered a simpler possibility. Perhaps the object had fallen into a natural crevice or crack in the coal at some point in recent centuries and became trapped over time. But geologists countered that theory by analyzing the structure of the coal seam itself. There were no stress fractures, no signs of post-formation intrusion, and no displacement in the surrounding material. The iron appeared fully integrated into the lignite, as if both had aged together. This fusion posed a major challenge to conventional explanations. Either the artifact was as old as the coal, or geological processes had somehow mimicked the appearance of deep time formation, something virtually unheard of. The debates continued, but with each new round of examinations, the scientific community found itself in the same position, unable to confirm the artifact's authenticity as ancient, but equally unable to debunk it outright. And so the object sat in limbo, too advanced for its context, too mysterious to dismiss. The Wolfsegg Iron was housed in the Salzburg Museum for years, but eventually became the center of unwanted attention. Then, mysteriously, the artifact vanished from public display and official records became sparse. Museum officials provided conflicting statements. Some suggested it was misplaced, others vaguely hinting at its removal to prevent public confusion. But all in all, there was no official announcement, no transparent documentation, just a growing silence where answers should have been. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain: the Wolfsegg Iron was no longer just an anomaly that had become a symbol of suppressed knowledge and the flashpoint in the battle between orthodoxy and the unexplained. To understand why the Wolfsegg Iron stirred such unease among experts, you have to step back and look at the bigger picture of human technological progress. Ironworking, as you know it, emerged relatively late in human history. The earliest evidence of smelting iron dates back to around 1200 BC, just over 3,000 years ago. And even then, it was primitive. The iron produced during the early Iron Age was brittle, riddled with impurities, and difficult to shape. It wasn't until the Industrial Revolution, nearly 18 centuries later, that humanity mastered high-purity iron production on a large scale. Yet here was an object potentially older than mankind itself, made of iron so pure and so precise that it rivaled industrial techniques not achieved until the 1800s. If the coal's age is accurate, and there's been little to disprove it, then the artifact's existence throws a wrench into the entire timeline of technological development. It suggests that either an unknown civilization possessed advanced metallurgy millions of years ago, or that our geological assumptions are flawed in ways we've yet to fully understand. Theories explaining the artifact ranges dramatically. Natural formation. Some geologists insist it's a rare iron concretion shaped naturally, yet none adequately explains the symmetry or precision. Lost civilizations. Alternative archaeologists suggest it's a relic from a forgotten ancient civilization, erased by natural disasters millions of years ago. Extraterrestrial origin. Then there are the more extreme interpretations. Some claim the Wolfsegg Iron was never of this earth, that it was left behind by visitors, observers, or even ancient terraformers. To them, the object is less about metallurgy and more about presence. Quantum artifacts. All fascinating ideas, but still completely speculative. Over the decades, the Wolfsegg Iron has become more than an artifact. It's become a symbol, cited in books, featured in documentaries, and debated across forums and fringe research circles. It now occupies a curious space between archaeology and mythology. For those who challenge mainstream timelines, it represents the cracks in a historical narrative. For skeptics, it's a cautionary tale about confirmation bias and jumping to extraordinary conclusions. The Wolfsegg Iron doesn't offer easy answers, and maybe that's the point. A forged object embedded in ancient coal, a vanishing artifact, conflicting reports, and unresolved questions. It forces us to rethink the limits of what we believe is possible. So what do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, this is only file 1. There are countless more mysteries waiting in the archives. Thanks for watching Late Night Top 5. If you enjoyed this video, we love your support, so hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment below. What mysteries should we cover next? And if you're up for more late night chills, check out the next video.